The search for the ideal, as we've been saying, is solved by finding shared ideals, shared goals, shared values, shared beliefs, moving in the same direction and enjoying each other. Perfectly possible to do that, but we have to remember to do it. If we don't remember that, we have a variety of ways that we can have problems. We may look forever for the perfect person and never get married. We never find the perfect person. We may think that we found the perfect person repeatedly and marry repeatedly, and each time I'll feet of clay, throw them back and try another. Then we get serial monogamy or affairs or whatever. We may be projecting it and we pick out someone else who's looking for the perfect person, and we're not good enough. We may convince ourselves that someone is the perfect person and repress the fact that it's not ideal all the time, because no relationship is ideal all the time. And then we get sick because we can't face our frustrations. Or we may convince ourselves that this person is our ideal and we don't want to go on living without him. I met one woman who was literally dying of cancer. She had fallen in love with a priest and he chose the church, and she didn't want to live without him, and she died of cancer. And another one who had left a husband, 4 little kids, had left her husband. She was having an affair with a married man and hoped he was going to marry her. He wasn't. But she don't want to go on living if I can't have him. That's one of the more destructive ways to do it. We can also marry someone and stay married to them and keep letting them know they're not perfect. That's also a rather nasty thing to do. Look, if you would shape up in this way and live up to these standards, and just do this, then you'd be okay. And I'd accept you. Or someone can do it to us. And we can also pick victims. Someone we can save. Instead of them being God for us, we're going to be God for them. We're going to rescue them. It doesn't work in personal relationships. Ends up poisonous. The victim has to get even. It's an ego put down. So they got to get even in one way or another. Lots of ways they can get even. They can two-time you. They can, all they have to do is just be a real super victim. You really want to carry me? I'll let you. Lots of possibilities. One of the ones,
like snowflakes.
Yeah, one of the workshops I did, I was going through all these series of things, and the girl kept saying, no, not that one, no, not that one, no, not that one. I said, well, maybe you picked out someone who thought he was God. She said, that's the one. So you see, there really are lots of options. The solution, again, is to not expect ideals out of a human relationship. It's never going to be more than human. Hopefully, it should be pleasant for both. Both people should be able to enjoy it. That's all Venus really asks by itself. When you put in Neptune and Jupiter and Chiron, and they want more. And then the other side of the coin of perfectionism is the Virgo and the Vesta. Look at the flaws. Look, I had this beautiful dream, and look at the flaws. It's not doing it. And of course, where is she doing that? First and foremost, to herself. That's first house. First house, Neptune, and first house, Chiron, and Jupiter conjuncts it over the line in the second, and Virgo rising. So the Neptune, Chiron, Jupiter are saying, I ought to be perfect. I ought to never make a mistake. And the Virgo says, uh-oh.
You've done it again.
Blew it.
Yeah.
So it's true for personal, individual, self, and relationships, both right straight across the board. A need to ease off on the super expectations. And it really is much stronger to herself, even than to relationships, because the house outweighs the sun. Plus, in addition, we've got East Point, anti-vertex, Mars, all keys to identity in the 12th house. So we've said 6 times, I ought to be perfect. And the Virgo rising and the East Point in Virgo. And Mercury ruling the ascendant in the 10th house, which is like being in Capricorn, are all looking at the flaws. So the first thing we have to do is say, my favorite motto, I'll be God tomorrow. Today I'm still human and it's okay. Now the Gemini helps and the Aquarius helps. There is a lot of air in the chart. Even the Libra helps if we get past our self-consciousness that we've got to please people, and if they don't like us, we're no good. But usually air is helpful to see the whole thing. That means we don't just look at the flaws. We look at the whole thing. We look at our assets too. And also air is accepting. Air sees what's there, and it doesn't have to do anything about it except understand it and talk about it and accept it. It's not like Earth. Earth has got to do something to make it better. And air says, I understand and I accept. That's fine. So hopefully the air is strong enough to counteract the danger of the extreme perfectionism. But it's something you have to talk about when you see that kind of chart, to see if they have worked that out. And often there will be some kind of connection with parents that give them an opportunity to work on the issue. We have the moon in the 4th house in the sign of Capricorn, which is normally father. We have Saturn in the sign of Cancer, which is normally mother. We have Ceres in the Aquarius sign and Saturn in the Aquarius house. So we could have either a role reversal of the parents, mother playing nurturer, father playing nurturer and mother playing disciplinarian, or we could have parents that are like each other. They share the roles. And we could have one parent playing both roles. Often with Uranus on the midheaven, there has been a disruption of some kind in the parental situation, and one parent has taken over both roles. And if the Aquarius is being brought out, if each of these three are being brought out effectively, it may be a great, perfectly positive situation. Cancer's there for nurturing, the Capricorn's there for realism and learning consequences, and the Aquarius is there for being friends and equal and accepting and communicating. So they each balance the other and provide what the other needs, and there may not be a serious problem. But there could be. The Sagittarius in the 4th and the Capricorn in the 4th suggest that the 4th house parent might have some of that look for the ideal and look at the flaws as a challenge in their nature, and we'll assume probably mother, because it is the moon there. So mother might be struggling also with that, I ought to be more perfect than I am. And of course, the more we do it to ourselves, the more the danger is, and we'll also do it to other people. So the child who is expecting too much of themselves comes to the parent who expects too much of themselves. And they may just do it to themselves. They may do it to each other, and it may be a mutual criticism society. Mutually being disappointed that the other person isn't ideal enough. That is a danger. Often with the Capricorn in the 4th, as we said yesterday, this is someone who learns to work early for any of many reasons. Whether it's an ill parent, so many kids that everybody has to help, not very adequate finances, that's less likely with Jupiter in the 2nd house. Just a parent who has a strong work ethic, that everybody ought to work. Somebody born on a farm, where naturally everybody has chores. Even small towns, sometimes you get that kind of upbringing. So for whatever reason, generally Capricorn in the 4th learns to be responsible. Learns to be a part of the work world early in life. And with a very strong 10th house, as well as the Capricorn moon, and even the fact that Saturn is conjunct Venus, we didn't mention that, for another identification with work and self-criticism, because Venus rules the 1st house Libra. So Venus is part of natural identity. Conjunct Saturn, identified with doing a good job, something.
If somebody has moved around a lot as a kid where you look for it, would the moon in the 4th house be there? Or SADS on the cusp?
You put the moon in a water or earth sign and they have to stay put and never leave. They can avoid it. No, fire or air. something like the nodes across the 4th and the 10th. Mars or Uranus or Jupiter in the 4th could indicate that, or their signs.
Would you look at that with that Sagittarius?
The possibility is definitely there, with the nodes across the 4th and 10th, and Sagittarius on the 4th. Could have been constant uprooting.
In the South Node too.
But she's got the Capricorn in there with the moon, which
Yeah.
tends to hang on forever and never leave.
Yeah.
So one possibility is, one possibility is to have a permanent home and travel. That's what happened with me. I have Mars in the 4th. But I lived in the same house until I was in my middle 20s. But I traveled all the time. So you can't assume details.
Yeah.
But the possibility is there of moves, the possibilities are of travel, either one. The possibility is there of living in other countries with Sagittarius there. So it's a freedom closeness dilemma, just putting Sagittarius in the 4th. Because the 4th house says permanent nest. And Sagittarius says, I want to go see what's over the hill.
Now, is that essentially when you're growing up, or could it also be the same thing
Anytime.
anytime in your life?
Anytime, unless it is resolved. Yeah. Right. Anyway, we've got that very mixed picture for parents. So it isn't clearly one way or the other. It could have been, if the parents integrated, we could have had one parent, or both parents could have been responsible, but still nurturing and still accepting. The positive side of all three. Or they might have been the negative side of all three. I've seen, that kind of combination too, which can be pretty awful. The parent takes the responsible role, but they do it in such a way that the child is made to feel that they're no good because they're helpless and dependent. So it's not done with love and kindness. And at the same time, the parent is emotionally cold on one side of Aquarius. So you can have either the positive of all of them or the negative of all of them, or a mixture. All the chart shows is the issues. The Aquarius can be just real friends and accepting, or it can be really cold and distant. Keep your distance. The Capricorn can be responsible and protective, or it can be harsh and rejecting and critical, dominating. The Cancer can be protective and warm, or it can be, you helpless thing, you. I'm taking care of you, and you're no good for being helpless. Or occasionally you get the other side, of course, the parent who's helpless, so the child has to end up being parent of the parent. The Ceres in the 5th and the Moon in the 4th are very strong maternal instinct. Maternal instinct. And yet they're in transpersonal signs, so that's part of the freedom closeness dilemma. There's a very strong maternal instinct in the chart, and yet it's mixed with a transpersonal. So sometimes the person will try to solve that by being in a field of work that nurtures people. That way, instead of having their own kids, where they're there all the time, they work with young people, or they work with people with problems. They work to help people. And sometimes they end up being parents of their own parent, in this case, mother, with Moon in Ceres, key to mother. And sometimes they have a child who is like the mother. Or the relationship with the child is similar to the relationship they had with the mother. If there was a problem to be worked out, to be learned through the mother, and they don't learn it with the mother, they will go on and learn it with their own child. Or some other love relationship later on. One of the most striking interviews I ever had, I still remember, was a similar kind of thing. This woman had the South Node in the 4th, along with the Moon, and Ceres in the 5th. And some of it was in Pisces, as I recall. And I talked about how if she didn't work out the relationship with her mother, it was a lesson through the mother. And if it wasn't worked out with the mother, it might be repeated and worked out through a child later on. And it would be the possibility of a similar kind of relationship with a child that she had with the mother. And the mother, of course, the possibility of her mother being like her own child too. And she burst into tears. And she said, oh, that explains so much that I had never understood. She said, I grew up with a mother who was an invalid, and she was a saint. My father was totally tyrannical, totally dictatorial, ruled the roost. And I was the only girl, and I had several brothers. This was in a German background. And she said, the only way my mother escaped, I do realize that now, but the only way that she could escape my father's control was to be ill. And she was chronically ill. And I had to do all the things that she should have done, all the housekeeping and all the cooking and cleaning and dishes and washing clothes and everything. I never had any childhood. I had to run home from school to work on all these house things, and my brothers didn't have to do anything. They were men, and they didn't have to do anything. And I hated my mother because I had to do all the things she should have done. And she said, now I have 2 boys, and one of them is like my mother. He's Pisces too. And he cries if you look at him. And I can see him starting to go into the same pattern of illness that she had. And I hate myself, but I pick on him. And I can't stand it, and I don't know why I do it, but I pick on him. And even his younger brother picks on him and realizes, and he just cries, he won't fight back. And so he didn't realize, but this child was reminding her of her mother and her anger against her mother. And she said, I never could do anything with my mother because she was a saint, and how can you attack a saint? And now, without even knowing what she was doing, she was attacking this child that reminded her of her mother and then hating herself for it. So the way we play out our relationships, repeating until we've learned.
How could you help that woman?
I think it was helpful just to finally understand that what she was doing was relating to the child as the mother, that she could never do anything in the relationship with the mother, and now it was coming out unconsciously against the child. And I think it probably did help, because she was an intelligent person and a well-meaning person.
And awareness of that.
And I think the awareness probably did help.
All of that goes to show you that someone who's too ill to attack is just the biggest tyrant around.
They can be. And the mother wasn't, though. She was the passive, saintly victim. Took everything without any complaints, you know. She was literally like a saint, suffering saint. And how can you attack that? And the son was going right into that same martyr pattern. So when we have a lot of air, normally that doesn't happen. This woman had very little air in her chart. Usually air will become aware and won't go to the extremes, the emotional extremes as much. But there's no guarantee ever. We just have to explore it with the person, discuss the situation with the person, and see what's going on in their life to understand fully how that is being handled. Anyway, all we can say is, again, the relationship with the mother or the mother figure, if it's grandmother, someone else playing the mother role, is real important in the ability to nurture others, the ability to procreate, to have children and to nurture them. If it's worked out comfortably with the mother, we're way ahead of the game in our later love relationships. If it isn't, we keep on working on it. We always get another chance till we've handled it. Life keeps giving us the same thing in other clothes until we handle it.